right, so I've been working at this car wash for a few days now, and every time I've worked, there's this one guy that's been there every time. It's my black coworker that, it's the same guy that escalated the big fight that happened on my first day. And I guess he's one of the people that's been working there the longest because he seems to know everything about the job, and he's pretty much the main one that's been training me. So, yesterday at work, he asked me if I could give him a ride home, and I didn't really want to, but I said I would because, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm just a nice guy. But I did not end up needing to give him a ride home because he found another ride. And I wouldn't even believe this if I didn't see it happen, but it's actually kind of insightful to see how it is for some guys. So I'll just start from the beginning. So, like I said, this guy had asked me to give him a ride home, and I was going to, but at some point around the middle of the day, this woman comes in with her minivan, and she's a MILF. She's not like beautiful or anything, but I would say she meets the standards of being called a MILF. And I don't even know if she actually has kids or not, but I'm assuming she does because she's probably like early to mid 40s and she was driving a minivan. So she probably does have kids. And I don't know, like I said, it's not like she was the hottest MILF I've ever seen, but she was all right. She had blonde hair and a big butt. Not even the most shapely butt, but she had some size to it in a good way. And she was wearing yoga pants. So I'll put it like this. She looked good enough that I did intentionally try to get a look at her from behind just because when I first saw her, I noticed that she was wearing yoga pants and I thought, okay, let's see what she's got going on. And she also, she had that kind of personality where I don't really know how to describe it, but it's just kind of like that hot MILF personality. Like she was kind of bubbly and she just looked fancy. Like her van looked expensive, her clothes looked expensive. She was wearing some kind of like bracelets and stuff. She just had an air about her like she came from rich stock. Like her dad was probably a doctor or a small business owner or something, and then she got married to a guy that is also very successful. She's probably married to a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And I didn't even talk to her personally, but I just overheard her talking with my coworker. So yeah, she just had that hot MILF personality, and she's a MILF. She was a MILF. I don't know what else to say about it. But anyways, so my coworker, and I'm just gonna call him Jamal because that's not his real name, but it is something kind of like that. So Jamal is a really outgoing, charismatic guy. And if you remember from when I first came into the place to talk to the owner about getting the job, Jamal is the same guy that was telling the Indian girl her food smells like shit and all that. So, my first impression of him, he didn't really seem like all that charismatic or friendly. But now that I've interacted with him a bit more, I'm assuming he was just joking that time because he actually is a very friendly guy. So, yeah, when we finished cleaning this MILF's van, Jamal went inside to give her her keys, and I could see through the window they were talking for a second, and then they both walked back out together. And I guess she asked him to explain what all we were doing to her car, or what all we did, because they walked back over to the van, and Jamal was telling her things like, we took out the floor mats and we vacuumed everything and we wiped down the dash, we washed the windows, yada yada. He's just basically describing everything we did. So there wasn't any other cars at the time, so I was just sitting there resting, so I could hear everything they're saying. I don't remember everything they said, but she gave Jamal a tip, which he did split with me, by the way. But after she tipped him, he was like, "Ma'am, I just gotta say, you are absolutely beautiful." And she was like, "Oh my God, no, I'm not. Thank you." She said something like that. And I mean, you could just tell she was into it. So then he was like, I forget exactly what he said, but basically he was hitting on her very aggressively. And you could just tell she was loving it, but she was trying to act like she wasn't, you know? So he asked her for her number and she was just like, "Oh, I'm so flattered, but I don't give it out." And he was like, he took out a pen and a business card or something, and he wrote down his number, and he was like, "Well, here, if you change your mind, here's my number." And she wouldn't take it, She was like, "No, no, I'm very flattered, but I don't even know you, I don't even know you." And so then Jamal was like, "Well, listen, I'm a handyman. I fix fences. I clean gutters," or, whatever. I don't remember exactly what he said, but basically he was telling her to take his number in case she needed any handyman services. And then, so she did. She took his number after that. And, the whole time she's like blushing, and smiling, and giggling. You can tell she's loving every second of it. And then, you know, seeing this shit just kind of blew my mind. Like, it was already surprising seeing all this go down, but then he basically was just like, "Listen, I was actually wondering if you would be able to come back and give me a ride home later." And at first she was like, "Oh, you're funny." Like she thought he was joking, but he was being serious. And she was just like, "I have things to do. I don't think I'll be able to do that." So, Jamal was like, "Okay, no worries." And then the MILF left, and I thought that was the end of it. I was like, okay, you know, he was hitting on her. She obviously enjoyed the attention, but looking at her and looking at him, I just thought, you know, there's no way. There's no way. Because Jamal's not like, he's not like Tyrone or Chad, so to speak. He's not like, I mean, I guess maybe he is, but to me, he just looks like an average guy. Like he's not particularly good looking, I wouldn't think. And obviously, he works at the car wash. So, I thought that's the end of that. The MILF obviously enjoyed the attention, but she's not going to come pick him up from work. That, like, that's insane. That's not going to happen. Well, a couple hours later, Jamal comes up to me and he tells me not to worry about giving him a ride home. He says he found another ride. And I didn't even think much about it. I was just like, okay, I guess he got one of his friends to agree to come pick him up. But then the end of the day comes around and I get in my car to leave and Jamal's just sitting out front waiting on his ride. And then I see this van pull up and it's the same van. It's the MILF. It's the MILF. She actually came to pick him up. And, just from that, I mean, it's kind of obvious what's going on. But then today at work, that was all yesterday, Jamal was like, "Hey, you saw that pretty lady come pick me up after work, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I tapped that." And what was it? He said something like, "And she was nasty too." He was like, "She was nasty." And I think he meant that in a good way, by the way. But yeah, I mean, I already figured he probably hit it just based on what I already saw. She came to pick him up from work. So that, that pretty much confirmed it. And I know most of you are probably listening to this like, so what? We all know how it is for Chad and Tyrone. But like I was saying earlier, I wouldn't even say Jamal is at Chad level of good looks. He's just an average looking guy. He's probably like, he's on the taller end. He's probably like 6 feet tall, maybe a little bit shorter, actually. And he's slim. He has all his teeth, but he's not like particularly good looking in his face. He's not ugly or anything, but I really would not have thought that he would be able to pull off what he did. Because, like I say, it's not like this woman was the MILF of all MILFs or anything. She wasn't like, right, it wasn't like a supermodel or anything, but she was a MILF. And, she was hot. It was a hot MILF. And the biggest part of it, she looked like she's probably pretty well off. And I don't know if she's married or not. I don't know if she has kids or not. I hope she's not married, but I don't know. And I didn't notice a ring on her finger or anything, but I also wasn't really looking for one. So, I don't know. It's not like I didn't already know how women are with certain guys, but just seeing it happen in front of my own eyes, like this very fancy, rich looking MILF, like seriously, if you saw this lady, if you just saw this lady walking around Target or something, you'd probably assume she's married to a CEO or a lawyer or something. And, she probably is, for all I know, but maybe I'm just being naive, but I think most of you, if you saw this woman somewhere out and about, you would not think that she would just be throwing it back for some random black guy that works at a car wash the same day she met him. Even going through the trouble of driving to his work to pick him up after work and everything. I talk about these things on this channel, and I'm always talking about things a little bit in the abstract. But what I just witnessed with this whole situation, very fancy looking, attractive MILF, and my coworker Jamal, working at the car wash, just starts chatting her up. And, I didn't think that much of it. It was a little bit surprising, kind of just seeing it happen in front of me, but I didn't think that much of it at first when he's just talking to her and she was obviously enjoying the attention, but it's like, it's a somewhat older woman being hit on. She's gonna enjoy that, but I didn't think it would go any further than that. But to see her actually come back to pick him up from work and assuming what he said is true, that he gave her the business, which I do believe because, she picked him up from work. It probably is true what he said. It really just goes to show how different life is for some guys. And, giving credit where it's due, Jamal is a good talker. He's very charismatic. And, he put himself out there to approach this woman and just blatantly hit on her like that. So I will give him credit for that. It didn't exactly fall into his lap, but I'm pretty sure if I had said all of the exact same words that Jamal said to this woman, best case scenario, I would have been slapped across the face or pepper sprayed or something, I'd probably be sitting in a jail cell right now awaiting trial for sexual harassment. So it's just crazy to see this happen in person. And it's a little bit depressing too, because just based on this woman's age and the car she drives and, how she was dressed, just everything about her, she probably is married. Even if she's not, she probably has kids. She's driving a minivan, so, she probably has kids. So even if she's divorced or whatever, she shouldn't just be getting railed out by car wash employees 4 hours after meeting them. I mean, shit, she already left the tip. But Jamal's cool. He's a cool guy. He's cool with me. So, I'm happy for him. Good for him. But Jesus Cristo. You always hear the classic tale of the housewife and the pool boy. And it's like, yeah, of course shit like that happens. But honestly, I really would rather not have it confirmed right in front of my face. I wish I could just remain blissfully unaware of the moral degeneracy of the average woman. This woman should be going to bed early so she can get up bright and early in the morning to treat her husband and children to fresh blueberry pancakes and bacon in the morning. But instead, she went out of her way to go pick up Jamal from work at the freaking car wash. And I mean, I can't even imagine pulling off something like that. Like, how do you even get to the point where you see a fancy MILF like that and you're working at a car wash for $11 an hour and you're just like, yep, I'm gonna smash that tonight. Because like I said, Jamal isn't even Tyrone or Chad, whatever you want to call it. He's just an average looking guy. And he's probably like, I don't know how old he is. I would guess he's like late 20s, early 30s. He's probably roughly my age, maybe a little younger. And he obviously doesn't have a lot of money. He works at a car wash, the same job I'm doing. So just how does this even happen? Of course, the thing that I can only assume this woman probably has a thing for people with a skin complexion like Jamal. She probably has a thing for that genre of man. I can only assume. And she's obviously a total floozy. But just seeing this, and just seeing how Jamal was acting when he was telling me about, how he was like, I tapped that, and just the way he was acting, he was bragging a little bit, but he was acting kind of like it's no big deal, like that's just normal for him. So it probably is. And it's no wonder he works at a car wash, because why would you even bother trying to get a better job if you can just continue working at a car wash and just snatch up rich white MILFs any day of the week? I mean, talk about living the dream. I've talked about this before, but the only reason that men have ambition to, become a doctor or whatever, start a company and get rich and work hard, the only reason men have that ambition is to get pussy. But for someone like Jamal, he's working at a car wash. I'm sure he makes enough money to afford rent wherever he lives. Probably lives in some shithole apartment with roommates, I would guess. I don't really know. But he's living the dream. He got with the same woman that some other guy has to work his ass off for his whole life to end up with and to maintain that relationship with that woman. And Jamal got that, and he got the good part of it. You know what I mean? He got her to come pick him up and do whatever they did together. That's the good part of the relationship with that woman. Because I bet if you were any normal guy that is in a relationship with this woman, her husband, or a guy that, because she's probably married, assuming she has a husband, he gets maybe some of that, right? He gets some action from her, probably, but Jamal got that and doesn't have to put up with any nagging. He doesn't have to do chores around her house. And if he did, then she'd probably pay him for his handyman services. So Jamal just, snatches this woman up out of the car wash parking lot. He gets to have his fun with her, while some other guy, to get to have even half the fun that Jamal got to have with her, some other guy has to put up with all of her incessant nagging, has to pay for her freaking pay for everything in her life. A man probably bought that nice minivan that she was driving. There's some man that probably paid for that in full. And she's using it to go pick up Jamal from the car wash. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Like, I already know this kind of thing happens. I know this kind of thing happens. Obviously, we all know it does. But I kind of wish I didn't have to see it. I kind of wish I could just stay naive. I wish I could just be blissfully unaware, you know? I don't need to know what kind of tremendous exploits my coworker at my same job that has the same job as me, I don't need to know how great his life is in comparison to mine. That doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel very jealous and pathetic.